Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
May it please the court?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please tell us your full name,
Crystal Jewel Maxu.
and will you please tell us what you do for a living?
I own a cleaning company.
And are you local to the area?
Yes, I am.
How do you know Susan Lorincz?
I have known her probably since 2012. I met her at a church called Ocala Farm Ministries.
Is Susan a devout Christian?
Yeah?
Was Susan always praying for you and your family and other people?
Yes.
Did there come a time where your niece was having a very difficult time in her life?
Yes.
And did Susan help in that process?
Yes, she actually mentored her.
How did Susan mentor your niece?
She would call her. She was in and out of some issues with the mental health. And she would go and check on her and bake her food and call her and pray with her.
How would you describe Susan in general?
Very kind and generous. Pretty consistent.
Would you describe her as a good friend?
Yes, 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 yes.
Did Susan speak with you about her difficult childhood?
Briefly, I know that she had some very specific trauma concerning her childhood with her father.
Now, she never got into details with you.
No. No, sir.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, I just said no, sir.
Now, did you and Susan together pray for Susan and what she went through in her childhood?
Yes, we have prayed a few times.
And what did the prayers consist of?
Just healing.
Healing for Susan?
Yeah.
And the residue of the trauma?
Correct.
Is Susan a good chef?
Oh, my. Yes, yes, yes.
Please
yes.
tell us about that.
Well, she's baked for us and cooked for us for many years, even at our wedding. My husband and I, she cooked for 3 days, 3 straight days for us. And we had about 300 people there at the church, and she just would not stop cooking and baking, and she just continues to invite us over during the holidays and stuff, and she would cook just amazing things.
Was Susan, in your interactions with her, always helping people?
Yes, yes.
In what way?
All the time. She was just giving to people, cooking for them, going to give food away. She would help her sister. She would help her nephew. She would always give me rides when I had no ride or no license, actually, in the beginning of our friendship to St. Augustine to see my mom who was handicapped and my children.
Now, let's talk a little bit about Susan's sister. Susan has a sister?
Yes.
What is her name?
Ellen?
And how did Susan go about helping Ellen and her issues?
Well, she took her in a few times that I know of. Was always taking care of her. Always taking care of her nephew. I was there when he was born at the hospital, yeah, basically, I can't multiple places that she lived. She would always bring Ellen with her.
Now, Ellen has a son. I think you mentioned him. His name is Gabriel.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How was Susan as a aunt to Gabriel?
Amazing. She would. I mean, even at holidays and stuff, she was always buying him stuff, taking care of him, always concerned about him, always.
Now, you mentioned that your family or your mom lived in St. Augustine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was it at that point, was it difficult for you to get to St. Augustine to see them?
Yes.
And how would Susan help in that process?
She would offer me rides. She wouldn't even take money from me. She would help me. My mom and her actually became really good friends before my mom went home to the Lord, and just was there for me. Anytime, she'd always ask me if I need rides, take me to the store. Would have never asked me for money or anything.
Is it safe to say that Susan has been a good friend to you?
Yes, yes,
When you first met Susan, were you starting a new life here in Ocala?
yes.
And how were you starting a new life?
I moved here from a rehabilitation home, and decided to make a decision to leave everything behind in St. Augustine and start a new life. And I started working at the Melting Pot and went over to Ocala Farm Ministries. They actually picked me up every single week for 10 months, and that's where I met her. And then she befriended me, and she was on a farm with some horses that she had, and her sister. And they were nothing. They never expected anything from me. They just always wanted to help me.
In this process of you rebuilding your life and starting a new life here in Ocala, did Susan help in that process?
Yes.
In what way?
Just being a friend, being there, helping with a new type of friendship. And, she, like I said, she would help me get on my feet. She gave me rides, just multiple different things that she would do to support.
From your interactions with Susan, is she a violent person?
No.
An aggressive person?
No, sir.
From your interactions with Susan and the time that you have known her, which has been approximately 12, 13 years at this point?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is she a hard worker?
Yes.
In what way?
She's always working. We barely, actually, towards the last few years, we didn't get a lot of time to spend together. Holidays, she would always usually be cooking. But she was working at different places, and she was working like 50, 60 hours a week, and then she had some licensing she got from home and was working at home, but a lot of working.
Did she financially maintain herself and pay her own bills?
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to see Susan interact with people?
Yes.
How does she interact with people?
Normal. Nothing abnormal. She was actually, with a church event she would invite me to because she sang. And she was really close to the church and the events, and she would always invite us to do like the monthly church, I guess maybe eating and where they have fellowship. And we went down there, and she was just always friendly.
Does Susan have a big heart?
Yes.
You mentioned her singing at church. Did she sing in the choir at church?
Yes.
Does she have a talent for singing?
Yes.
What kind of voice does she have?
I think it's called soprano. Not sure. Opera. It's like an opera. She sounds like an opera singer.
And would she always sing at church and volunteer her
Yep.
time in that way? Did there come a time where Susan confided in you that she was having problems at home?
Yes, a few times she would ask me to pray for her for the next door people in the neighborhood.
But she never gave you specifics.
Not exact specifics, no.
Did you ever go to her home?
Yes.
Did you hear, was there a lot going on in the neighborhood?
It was loud.
Was Susan one to discuss her feelings with you?
Here and there. She was mainly getting to where she had mentioned the neighborhood, like she was thinking about moving.
Have you ever been in a situation with Susan where she has felt like she was in danger?
No.
Were you shocked when you heard that Susan was involved in this incident?
Very.
And why is that?
Well, I had to actually look on the internet to find out, and just that it's almost completely opposite of the person that I know, to be honest with you.
How has Susan's friendship helped you become a better person?
My past has led me to where I'm at today, and she was one of the very first people that befriended me. I didn't even know what a friend was. I didn't know how to be a good friend in my past, and it was always either take, give and take. And she was very much of a giver, and during this friendship, I learned from her on how to really treat people, and I believe honestly that God brought her into my life to help me to be a better person and a better friend. And today I know how to be a friend. And so it was for me, I thought about that for a long time, and she's been a consistent friend to me. Who would I be if I didn't come up here and say this today, the truth?
Okay. Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Anything from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Next witness, Your Honor, is Michael Maxo.
Raise your right hand for me. Do you swear or affirm affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
May it please the court, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please tell us your full name.
Michael Antoine Maxu.
And what do you do for a living?
I do property removal.
And do you live in the area, in the Ocala area?
Yes.
Now, Crystal, is that your wife?
Yes.
And how long have you all been married?
8 years.
How long have you...
November 10th was our anniversary.
Yes, sir. How long have you known Susan?
About 8 years.
Was it Crystal that introduced you to Susan?
Yes.
And did you all at one point go to the same church together?
Yes.
Which one is that?
Open Door Community Church in Summerfield.
Okay. How would you describe Susan?
She just was pleasant and kind person.
Kind in what way?
Just very outgoing and generous. She liked to cook and, just pleasant. Just pleasant person.
Is she a good chef?
Yes.
Has she been a good friend to you and to your wife, Crystal?
Yes, we've done, a few holidays together and, like Thanksgiving and whatnot. And
Was Susan always helping people?
yes.
In what way?
She just, she worked for, as a chef, for a nursing home and stuff like that. She used to always give my wife rides when she needed it before I was in the picture. She would come and pick her up and take her to church and things like that.
Did she actually cook for your wedding for days and days?
Yes.
Is she a caretaker to her sister Ellen?
As far as I know, she took care of Ellen's, her nephew for the most part.
Her nephew Gabriel?
Yes.
Ellen's son?
Ellen's son, yes.
Have you ever seen Susan be violent or aggressive?
No, sir.
Is Susan a hard worker?
Yes.
In what way?
When she was chefing, she would work 60 hours a week.
Did she financially maintain herself and pay her own bills?
Yes, she did.
Did Susan sing at the church that you all attended?
Yes.
What kind of voice does Susan have?
She has an opera voice.
Have you ever been in a situation with Susan where she felt like she was in danger?
Not that I can recall.
Were you shocked when you heard about the incident that Susan was involved in?
Yes.
And why were you shocked?
Just out of her character.
In what way?
Just, I guess you wouldn't expect someone that you know and have been close to do something like that.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
State, have any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, sir.
Next is Shannon Harris, Your Honor.
Name, face, clerk. Thank you.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Have a seat, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Please tell us your full name.
Shannon Lynn Harris.
And what do you do for a living, Ms. Harris?
I am a pastor. I have been for the last 10 years.
Pastor where?
I pastor Anthony United Methodist Church and also Shiloh United Methodist Church up in Micanopy.
And how long have you known Susan Lorincz?
I met Susan when I started at Anthony United Methodist Church in July of 2022.
How would you describe Susan?
Kind, loving. Several years ago, but that would have been 2023. My husband was in the hospital in Tampa. My mother-in-law was in Advent Hospital. My sister-in-law was in Gainesville. My brother-in-law and I were trying to take care of everybody. And all of the family except for me got COVID. So things were difficult when we brought them home. And Susan brought over a large thing of lasagna, some salads. She said, if you need anything, if you need to just talk, if you need to vent, I'm here.
Was Susan a constant supporting force for you during that difficult time?
Absolutely, yes. It was a very difficult time. My husband's cancer had metastasized, and it's sometimes very difficult. Being the pastor, you don't necessarily get taken care of all the time in the ways that Sue helped to take care of me.
Besides providing food and things of substance for you all to eat and drink, did she provide emotional support for you when your husband was dying?
Yes.
In
yes.
what way?
Yes, she absolutely. She would let me know that she was praying for me. On Sundays, she would make sure that I got an extra big hug. She would ask how my week was. You know, she was always concerned with, was I doing okay? And reminding me that I needed to take care of me if I was going to take care of others as well.
Did Susan make this very difficult time in your life just a little bit better?
Yes, absolutely, because she was such a calm presence.
Have you seen her interact with her sister, Ellen?
Yes.
What kind of sister is she to Ellen?
Oh, she was fantastic. Ellen faced a lot of health challenges, and Susan was always there to help her, to encourage her, to lift her up in some pretty trying times.
Does Ellen have a son?
Yes.
Does Ellen's son have some issues, if you will?
Yes, he does.
And did Susan help Ellen in taking care of her son, that being Ellen's son?
Yes.
In what
way?
Well,
the first couple of times that I met her son at church, he was with his aunt, and
he was with Susan.
Yes. And I didn't know whether that. I thought maybe it was either her child or a grandchild, and come to find out that she was actually his aunt, and he did so amazing with her because he could be a challenge. Particularly in service. Thankfully, the parishioners were gracious, but he could be a little tough to wrangle in sometimes, I guess we could say.
Do Susan and Gabriel have a close bond?
Absolutely, yes.
Have you ever seen Susan have a conflict with anyone?
No.
Is Susan violent at all?
No, not that I've seen.
How is she in general from what you saw with children and adults?
Oh, she was great. The girls at the church absolutely loved her. She would hang out with them. We have a fellowship time after service. And Sue would frequently make goodies for that. And then she would talk to, we have 2 young ladies that attend our church. And she was always very, very good with the girls, interested in what they were doing in the Girl Scouts, and just very good at communicating with them.
Have you ever seen Susan be aggressive?
No.
Impolite?
No.
Would you describe Susan as reserved?
Yes.
In what way?
She kind of kept to herself a lot of times, and it took a little bit. There was, I don't know how to describe it, maybe almost like a wall of sorts, I guess.
Okay.
And once you broke through that and you gained her trust, then she would be more open. But it took a little bit to get through that.
Have you ever seen Susan be in a dangerous situation or a stressful situation?
No.
We've heard that Susan sings at church.
Yes, beautifully.
And did she volunteer a lot of her time in doing that?
She did, not only with that, but with our drive-through dinner church, which is a one Saturday night a month. We serve dinner to the community. It's a free dinner. And Susan would frequently help out with making desserts for that. She would come to help us set up. She would help to serve. She also made the treats for our fellowship time after church on Sundays. So she was always serving in one way or another. If some of our elderly folks were having issues trying to figure out what insurance to get, Sue would sit down with them and help them navigate that difficult process. She's
And
also
Susan, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Susan worked in the insurance industry, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
she would help out those individuals when they had questions about what I should get, what kind of coverage I should get, things of that nature.
Yes, absolutely. And I have a lot of, let's call them wise folks in the congregation that I serve that really had a difficult time navigating that.
And Susan helped them.
She did. She would offer rides if they needed rides. We have several widows that if they needed rides to the doctor when they weren't feeling well. So yeah, she was always involved in something at the church.
Did Susan ever mention that she was having problems at home?
Yes.
And did she ask you to pray
Yes.
in regard to her problems she was having at home?
She did, yes, and in particular trying to find a place to move.
Okay. Anything else that you'd like to share with us regarding Susan?
She just, how do I say this? I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. I truly am shocked by what happened. It sent shockwaves through the entire church because this is just not, she was there, I'm not sure exactly how many years.
She was there before your time.
She was there, yes, well before my time. And this is just not the person that we know. That's all I can say.
And you actually had counselors come to the church and speak to other individuals.
Yes, this was absolutely devastating. So we did bring a professional in to help people to kind of process as best as we could.
Okay. Your Honor, I don't have any further questions.
So you have any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, Judge.
Your Honor, Ellen Lorincz.
Yeah, right here, ma'am.
Raise your right hand for me.
Are you able to?
Do you swear or affirm?
Hold on one sec. You can sit down and do it.
Okay.
She can sit down and be sworn in.
My balance is a little
That's fine. Don't worry about it. Thus, no requirement to stand.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Amen. Yep.
Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Please tell us your full name.
Ellen Dorothy Lorincz.
How do you know Susan?
She's my sister.
Are you older or younger than Susan?
I'm younger.
By how much?
4 years.
Were you raised with Susan?
Yes, I was.
Do you and Susan have the same biological parents?
Yes, we do.
And were you raised by both parents?
Yes, we were.
Does your family have a history of mental health issues?
Yes.
What was your mother's name?
Mildred Caroline Lorincz.
What was she like?
She was pretty much a good mom, but she had a lot of depression issues. My father was a drunk and he gambled a lot of money away. So my mom always had to work extra to keep, the family together.
And you said she suffered from depression?
Yes.
What was your paternal grandfather's name?
Lorincz.
And what was he like?
I don't know because he hung himself about a month before I was born.
What is your brother's name?
Stephen Louis Lorincz.
Does he have the same biological parents as you and Susan?
Yes, he does.
What is your brother like?
My brother is also a drunk. He's very violent at times. I haven't had any contact with him. After my mother died, he assaulted me, and I had a restraining order against him, and
You haven't seen him since?
yeah, pretty
And
much.
was Susan there when he assaulted you?
Yes, she was.
How about your Uncle Freddie Wargacki? What was he like?
I only met him a couple of times, but I remember vividly the one, we were having a picnic outside of our house, and my Uncle Freddie was, I guess, seeing or talking to somebody in his mind, and he decided to try and burn our house down.
And was he a paranoid schizophrenic with PTSD?
Yes, he was.
Was your Uncle Freddie on your mom's side or your dad's side?
My mother's side.
How about yourself? Do you suffer from mental health issues?
Yes, I do.
Will you please speak with us about that?
I've been diagnosed with PTSD, Stockholm Syndrome, and also bipolar depression.
And by PTSD, are you referring to post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yes, I am.
What is the cause of your PTSD and bipolar disorder?
My father had been raping me since the time I was about 4 years old. And he beat us a lot when we were younger, especially.
What was your father's name?
Stephen Lorincz.
When did your father begin abusing you and Susan?
I guess he started with Susan before I was born. And then after I was born, he waited till I was like 3-4 years old before he started doing whatever to me. I really don't remember it because I've kind of pushed it out of my mind.
And did he sexually abuse both you and Susan starting at a young age?
Yes, he did.
For years, did you blame yourself for allowing him to rape you?
Yeah, I did.
Please tell us a little bit about your father's background.
My father was born in Hungary, a town called Nudvarod, and he was a freedom fighter in 1956, and that's how he ended up in the United States. He was sponsored by our Hungarian church up north in New Jersey.
Was he a concentration camp prisoner?
Yes, he was at one point.
Was he, in addition to the sexual abuse, was he physically abusive to both you and your siblings?
Basically, my father was physically, emotionally, and sexually abusive to all of us, except my brother with the sexual.
Was there an instance where you and Susan were present where your father beat your brother Stephen on Easter Sunday?
Yes.
Will you please tell us about that?
My brother had gone out partying all night, and he came home probably about 4 or 5 in the morning, and he was sleeping, and my dad wanted us all to go to church together. And my brother was like, no, I don't have to go to church. He was 18 already. And he's like, I don't have to, I'm an adult. And my father's like, no, you're getting up. And I remember him dragging him out of his room. And then they started pushing and shoving. And the next thing I know, my father was beating my brother so badly that he was unconscious. And he was still hitting him. And my sister and my mother had to pull him off of my brother.
Was your father physically strong?
Yes, he was a sheetrocker, and he worked in, construction, so he was very strong.
Now, a few minutes ago, you were discussing your mother and saying that she suffered from depression.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of that depression, were a lot of the household duties put on you and Susan?
Yes.
In what way?
We were expected to, it started off with Sue, because she was older, that she would have to come home and make food for my family. And then when my sister got got babysitting jobs, then I got to, take over the duties of cooking. And, Sue was always the one who cleaned most of the time, and she was the one who did a lot of the laundry.
What would your father do to you and Susan if the food wasn't ready when he was ready to eat?
Oh, he would scream and yell at us and then tell us how stupid we were, and then he'd start beating us.
Would he beat you and Susan unconscious at times?
He had, one occasion I can remember, had beaten me because I wanted to run. I told him I was going to run away from home because he was just so horrible. And I told him I was going to go live in New York City and find a way to get away from him. And he's like, well, you're going to be homeless in New York City. This is what they do to homeless people. And he proceeded to beat the living snot out of me to the point where we had a central heating register in the one house we lived in. And I remember waking up on that, and I was bruised all over. And he was just so aggressive, and he's like, see, that's what's going to happen to you.
Was your father psychologically abusive as well?
Absolutely.
In what way?
He constantly told us that we were fat and stupid. We were ugly. I mean, just any kind of derogatory thing he could think of to call us.
Was there a time in high school where you had lost a significant amount of weight and wanted to buy a dress?
Yeah, I went on a diet. I went on Weight Watchers with my mom, and I proceeded to lose 100 pounds because I was 300 pounds in high school, and I went down to 199 pounds, which was huge for me. And I was trying to get some new clothes, and my father's like, well, it doesn't matter. You're ugly anyway. Just go put a potato sack on.
Was he that way with Susan as well?
Yes, he was.
And was Susan overweight in high school as well?
Yes.
Was your father verbally abusive to your mother as well?
On occasion, yeah. He would tell her she's a stupid, educated dummy. That was his favorite saying. And you're a fat pig, and he would tell her to stop eating, and just nasty in general.
When did the rapes begin for you?
Apparently, I was 4 years old, and my sister and my mom and my brother had gone out shopping, and when they came home, my dad was holding a bath towel between my legs, and it was covered in blood. And he told my mom, that I had done a Russian split and split myself, and that's why I was bleeding so heavily.
And did the rapes go on for decades?
Yes.
And for Susan as well?
Yes.
Was he violent during these rapes?
Yes. He would, make sure he covered our mouth so that nobody could hear he would muffle our screams and such.
Did there ever come a time where your mother found out that your father was sexually abusing both you and Susan?
She didn't find out until I was in my late 20s because I was ashamed.
What did you and your sister do in order to try to prevent these rapes?
Well, we kept gaining weight because he hated fat women. And my mom also did that too because he was just, rough with her and nasty.
Was your father cruel to people outside of the home as well?
Yes, he was. He had no problem, I remember one of his friends' daughter had gained some weight, and he's like, oh my God, you look horrible. You look like a stuffed pig. Just really nasty.
When your father passed away, was your father asking women out at her funeral?
You mean my mother?
I'm sorry, when your mother passed away, yes.
When my mother passed away, we had a service down here for our friends here, and he was asking women out. And then we had another service a week and a half later, and we went to New Jersey to our church we grew up in, the Hungarian church. And a lot of people came because they knew my mom. And I remember he asked the one lady, Lois, out that had been, he tried to get with her when he was younger before he married my mom. And he was like, oh, and she's like, she actually introduced her husband, who was black, and he's like, oh, he married a black man? My father was extremely prejudiced, and he's like, you're tainted now. I mean, just cruel, cruel words.
Once your mother passed away, did your father kick you and Susan out of the house?
Yes, he did.
Has Susan suffered through a lot of bad car accidents?
Yes, she has.
And suffered several physical ramifications because of those accidents?
Mm-hmm. She also had a couple horseback riding accidents, too.
Do you have a son?
Yes, I do.
And what is his name?
Gabriel Michael Lorincz Dunn.
Is Susan and Gabriel very close?
Very.
How would you describe their closeness, their relationship?
He absolutely adores her, and she's like a second mom to him.
Does Gabriel suffer from disabilities and mental health issues?
Yes, he does.
What kind?
My son was born legally blind. He can see with glasses, but he still has vision issues. I mean, his vision's still not, even with the glasses, he's still not 100%. He also has autism. He has ADHD and ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder.
How has Susan helped you with your son?
Oh, she would take him on the weekends so that I could get a break and, just get myself together. And she absolutely loved him. She took him all over the place, and he had a blast with her.
You spoke about when your brother attacked you, the last time that you saw him. Susan was there for that, right?
Yes, she was.
Can you tell us about that, please?
Well, my brother Stephen had come to live with us right after my mom passed away. And my dad was in Europe getting his next wife. And Stephen came in, and he was, kind of drunk already and nasty. And we had just finished supper, and we made supper for all three of us. And my brother just left everything, and I had yelled at him. I'm like, Stephen, just bring your plate to the sink at least, and, clean off the table. And he's like, I don't have to do crap. I'm a guy. You're a woman. You need to do it. So he ended up, I'm like, don't be a pig. And he finally brings the plate over, and he throws it in the sink, and then he started screaming at me. And he basically got in my face. And at one point, I had taken a bite of some food, and I took a deep inhale, and I was kind of choking on it. And he kept screaming at me, and I was coughing so hard, I finally coughed it up, and it hit him in the face. And he took whatever he was drinking, and he threw it at me, and it had ice in it, and it was very cold. And then he took the glass and roundhoused me on top of my head, and he sliced the side of my head open.
Has Susan worked as an EMT paramedic in the past?
Yes, she has.
And has she discussed with you how traumatic seeing what she saw during those times were to her?
Yes, she has.
Did she also have a friend named Lizzie who was murdered when you all were kids?
Yes.
And did that very much affect both you and Susan?
Yes.
Has Susan seen a therapist in the past?
Yes, she has.
Is Susan a very private person?
Yes.
In what way?
She doesn't like people to know her problems. She tries to keep that to herself, and she always tries to help others instead of, making everybody feel sorry for her. She just does her thing, and she just doesn't let people in easily. You have to really know Sue to really get to, what's going on with her.
Where did you and Susan grow up?
We grew up in New Jersey.
And what was the neighborhood like? In Clifton specifically?
We grew up in rough neighborhoods. It was low income, and it was just rough.
Before this incident occurred, had Susan told you that she was afraid of the deceased Miss Owens?
Yes, she was.
Did Susan tell you before this incident that she's been triggered by things that were going on in the neighborhood and that she could not sleep even with medication?
Yes, she did.
Susan, a hard worker?
Absolutely.
Has she always maintained herself
Yes, she has.
financially?
She even helped me with my son, you know, when I was short on cash. She always, you know, made sure Gabriel had school clothes, even shoes. I mean, she was always there for me.
And you all actually have opened up restaurants together, right?
Yes, we have.
And run them
Yes,
successfully.
absolutely.
What is your relationship like with Susan?
It's great. You know, we're sisters and we love each other.
With everything that you all have been through childhood and going into adulthood, would you say you're close, you and her?
Yes, very.
And you still speak with her?
Yes,
Do you love your sister?
yes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
No question. Thank you. Have your excuse. Thank you very much.
Dr. Yanis Castillo, Your Honor.